EMT. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. In this case, where the dramatic growth of the web gets revealed by a video infographic. The one we're about to see was produced by Jess 3, and it's full of surprises. We learn that of the 250 billion emails sent each day worldwide, 200 billion, 4 out of 5, are spam. Another surprise is the percent of social networking sites that are used more by women than by men. What percent? So were you surprised that social networkers are mostly women? Maybe virtual reality is not so different from face-to-face after all, huh? Also on our agenda for tonight, haul videos, H-A-U-L videos, where teens show the world what they bought at the mall. Like, what's that about? Also, the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn. It's now a Superfund site like Love Canal, but could it become a canal we love? And the art of signage. Does anyone know where track 5 is?
I think this is a wall sign where the hierarchies are a mess. There's too many messages that are all about the same size. They're evenly spaced. There's this arrow that's kind of diagonally to the left. There's another arrow that's pure left. Not good.
Please, Lord, lead us not into Penn Station. All this tonight, plus our video picks of the week. Now let's get right to the fulcrum of our culture, where video meets consumerism. No, not TV ads, that's old hat. The latest decentralized democratic twist is a phenomenon called haul, H-A-U-L, videos, haul videos, homemade video accounts, usually by a teenage girl, of the haul she has bought at the mall. Might be a blouse or belt or even a book. Let's take a look.
So it's not like I'm coming on here and I'm like, I'm 16, this is what my parents have money for. No, it's more like, I'm 16, I work 2 jobs, and this is what I've saved my money up for, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. Okay, so the first thing I got is this shirt that I'm wearing right now, and it's really loose, and actually, I hope you can see that it has a lot of beading up here at the top, and it actually makes the shirt really heavy, and it like weighs it down. It's kind of one of those shirts where it can be casual or dressy because the beading makes it a little dressy, but you could dress it down in just simple jeans, which is what I did. And these jeans are also, here, let me move it down a little. Okay, so these jeans are also from Forever 21, and I've never bought jeans from there, but they were having like a $6 denim day, and so these were only $6, and they're really nice, and they're really skinny, so I can tuck them into boots easily. And another thing is they don't have any detail on the back pocket. Okay, so normally it would bother me if my jeans didn't have any detail on the rear end. I don't know, I just like having like fun little designs and stuff. But I was actually reading, and they say that if there's not any design on the back pocket of your jeans, it actually draws attention away from, I don't know, there's somehow it makes your butt look smaller. So way to go for these jeans. That is why I bought them, and they were only $6.99, so you can't really beat that.
So that was Blair, also known as Juicy Star 07. Blair says she doesn't get paid to do her videos or get any free products, so why does she make them? And why do other teens watch them? That one has been viewed close to 600,000 times. Here to unpack the whole video phenomenon and show us a few more are three guests. Marissa Meltzer, author of Girl Power, The 90s Revolution in Music, and co-author of How Sassy Changed My Life, a love letter to the greatest teen magazine of all time. Chloe Angel, who blogs for Feministing and for the Huffington Post, and via Skype from Savannah, Rob Walker. He writes the Consumed column for the New York Times Magazine and is author of Buying In, the secret dialogue between what we buy and who we are. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Marissa, is there something really going on here? I mean, you know, it would be easy to dismiss these as trivial celebrations of consumerism. Is there something more here?
Well, I think it is easy to dismiss it as, you know, frivolous and insipid, and while that's there, I also think so much of being a teenager and, you know, going through adolescence is about finding your tribe. And one way that you do that is by buying things and defining yourself through, you know, what you like. And so I think one way that you could look at it is that these girls are, you know, figuring out who they are in a very public way, which is of course reflective of these, you know, exposed times that we live in, where everything is worthy of a YouTube video and where people are in Us Weekly for things that they buy, and there are celebrities who are largely famous for their shopping habits.
And Chloe, I thought the video that we just saw was a little bit suggestive, actually. So are these girls in it for that, or is it really about the products?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Marissa's right when she says we live in a culture where young women in America can very easily become famous by being beautiful, skinny, and public, by letting the camera into their shopping bag, their wallet, their bedroom, as we saw in that last video, and being willing to bare their souls and their shopping habits. That's how, as a young woman in America, it's very easy to get famous. I also think it's about the products. I think that we happen to be a part of a culture that puts a great amount of emphasis on female beauty, and there's a huge industry ready to aid us in that obsession. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So while it is about the products and it is about the exhibitionism, I think Marissa's right. There's definitely something else going on.
And Rob, what I've seen of the haul videos, they're mostly about clothes and makeup. So is this another reinforcement of gender stereotypes?
Well, I should note that there is actually a sort of subset of these videos that are about grocery shopping, which doesn't sound very interesting. But yeah, the dominant ones seem to be about clothes and makeup. And I think that what everyone's saying is absolutely right, that it's kind of almost, it's interesting to sort of see it as a kind of intersection of consumer culture, but also of web culture and just long-standing things about being young and like sort of trying to figure out where you fit into the world. And you know, what's weird about the times we live in is that, to me, I read a lot of these things as being almost like, they seem almost like auditions in some ways, to what they're sort of working within a language that you could easily see someone like the young woman who you just showed being on a regular, being like a segment on some cable show where it's just like, well, what does this sort of stylish young woman, what did she buy today? And a lot of other young women would be interested in that for very authentic, you know, honest reasons. It's, you know, you mentioned the sort of, there might be an audience in that particular video, there might be another audience of people who are watching for some other reason.
You are kidding.
Which you have in mind.
It never
That
crossed
brings
my
up
mind.
other issues that, you know, I don't know if we want to go. That's part of the web, but...
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, as we had before, because the next haul video that we're going to show is kind of different. Here, I think, the presenter, the shopper, is less polished, makes it less about her in the way the first video was, and it's really about the products, which are hair products. Let's watch.
From Whole Foods, what I got today, my good old trusty Kinky Curly Curling Custard. This is my go-to product I use every day. Of course, today I didn't use it. I just kind of woke up matted my hair down and then fluffed it to the top so I can kind of get like a little mohawk thing going on. But yeah, I use this all the time. I love it. You guys should try it. It's very good to put on when your hair is wet. It gives it the nice wet curl look. If you don't already have natural curls, it may not curl it, but I really do love it. And I'm going to try the Aubrey Organics Honeysuckle Rose conditioner as a deep conditioner. I've heard lots of good things about it from curlynikki.com, so I want to try this out, and I'll give you guys a review when I'm done with that. As well as I got the Kinky Curly, you guys are probably not going to be able to see this stuff, Kinky Curly Not Today leave-in conditioner that I want to try as well. So these are some things I got from Whole Foods that I want to definitely try out.
So, Chloe, if the first one was by a girl who was maybe trying to be the popular girl who others would want to emulate, or the model aspiring, or something like that, she seemed like the consumer reviewer whose reviews you might see on Yelp or something like that, and kind of trust them. So is there a sense of personal empowerment, community empowerment being communicated here?
You use the word consumer, and I think that's really important because this video goes on for several more minutes, and after the hair products she goes into, she bought almost an entire line of MAC cosmetics, and she shows screenshots of her hand with the samples of the colors on it and explains which of the products she likes best, and she's bought probably several $100s worth of cosmetics in this one haul. And I think the reason why the word consumer there is really important because that's an average shopping spree for the average woman in America. Last year, Newsweek did a long series on, they did a survey on the price of beauty for American women. And between the ages of 13 and 29, the average American woman spends over $20,000 on cosmetics. And that's just makeup products, the kind of products that she shows as that video goes on.
So these videos are just the latest technological expression of something that's really troubling.
I'm in no position to tell anyone how to spend their money. I can't say whether or not it's troubling. I can say that it is a huge industry, that young women are encouraged to spend their money this way. You don't see haul videos on women who have bought books, or women who have invested in the stock market, or women who have, given to charity. You see haul videos of women who are buying stuff.
But wait, we do see other kinds of things. Let's go to our third haul video. This is actually about a book haul, so it's maybe not in the same category as the others, from SoCal Ashley Danielle.
I heard this book right here. It's by Lauren Conrad. It's called L.A. Candy. Heard it was a really good book, and they're coming out with the second one, so I'm really into books. I love reading. I read all the time. I read the whole Harry Potter series, the whole Twilight series, and I just really, really like reading and everything like that. So that's a book I got from Target. It was like $7, so almost fell. This movie I've been waiting to see for, my binder fell, for a long time. It's called Public Enemies. I'm really into like the whole gangster from the 1920s and 30s and everything like that, like Bonnie and Clyde. Like, I watch the History Channel. You might think I'm a dork, but I do. I watch it for Woodstock and bank robberies from a long time ago and how the Romans lived. And my dad and my brother mainly watch wars like World War I and World War II, but I mainly watch, I don't know, I'm really interested in decades and everything like that. I really love the 60s and 70s. That's like my favorite decades. I got that movie. I'm really into psychology, so I heard this would be a good movie. It's called Girl Interrupted. Has Angelina Jolie, Winona Ryder, and all that. Really good actors. Got it for $5 at Target, which is not bad, so I went ahead and got it.
So, Rob Walker, her haul is books. She's talking about how she's into reading, she's into psychology. Is there something more substantive here, or not really?
She's really into psychology. I mean, this is more, that one is a little more consistent with, of the haul videos that I've seen. One of the things that has struck me is the number of people who are showing things that they just, like, they're not really reviewing the product. They just like, I just bought this. I haven't read it. I haven't looked at it. I haven't And I saw at least one most of these are women, but I have seen at least one with a guy who was literally sort of like, I just got these colognes in the mail and I'm really excited about them. And I'm not quite sure how to parse that. It's sort of like, that seems more like, it's less like consumer review and more like just sort of social bonding. Like, hey, check out what I just got. Like the way you might come home from the mall and show your siblings or your friends or your significant other, like, I just got this stuff, you know, isn't this cool, isn't this exciting? Like you're kind of sharing that moment of anticipation more than you're doing any sort of like consumer reports kind of thing. It's more of like a sort of social moment.
And so, Marissa, is there anything wrong with that? If our circle of friends is online as well as it's face-to-face these days?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems sort of an inevitable expression of the way that we're living our lives, particularly if you're a teenager who has, I don't know, perhaps esoteric interests, or you live in an isolated community, or your friends all happen to be your internet friends, and, you know, that's your way of bonding and, you know, connecting with them on a literal basis. And, you know, like Rob said, it's something that we all do. I certainly show off things that I buy, and one of my best friends happens to live in San Francisco. I email her pictures of me in new outfits and showing off a new bag all the time, you know, for her approval, and also to tell her what a good deal it is, or, you know.
So where for you does this fit into the feminist world? I mean,
well,
it was she seemed like somebody who assumed that she was not going to spend her life staying home as a housewife, was going to go out and maybe be a psychologist or who knows what. So, and yet it's an attachment to shopping. So I don't know, where does this fit in on this feminism spectrum?
I don't think there's anything inherently feminist or unfeminist about shopping. What I think is really interesting about that video, and I have to say, she comes across as a really charming girl who kind of wants people to know that she's a bit of a history geek, and it's adorable. But I think what's really interesting about that video is that she specifies the cost of the book and of the psychology DVD, and when she later goes on to talk about the makeup and the shipment of Abercrombie & Fitch clothes that she just received, and she's wearing one of the shirts in that video, there's no justification of how much money she spent on that. So I think it's important to weigh how much she's spending on Girl Interrupted, which she happened to find for $5 at Target, and the huge shipment of Abercrombie & Fitch clothes.
We're going to show the guy equivalent in just a second. Excellent. But Rob, you have a concept that you've made up, a word you've coined, marketing. What's that?
Well, it's that blurring between what's marketing and what's real life. And you know, one of the maybe subplots to this is that you've probably seen there's been some data floating around recently about, well, declining trust maybe in what people read online, and I think that we're in a weird moment. I mean, we're in this constant evolution right now of what there's been this kind of explosion of you know, online product reviews, and then there's been a kind of a wave of like, oh, well, how much of that is what wasn't really a real product review? It was a you know, something that was given to them by the company, and so they were excited about it. These don't seem to me to be falling into that category, and I've wondered if maybe this is kind of, these kinds of videos benefit from, there is this, you know, the person is there looking you in the eye, as it were, and they seem really to have just come home from Target or wherever it is they've come home from, and they really did buy this stuff, and they're giving you prices, and that seems a little bit maybe more trustworthy as the sort of bar keeps getting raised on what, you know, we're constantly trying to figure out what's real and what has been gamed by some company seeding product into the marketplace.
So the male version is known not as haul videos, but as unboxing videos. Here is a guy, and I think his frog puppet, with his brand new DSi.
Smiling is, I cannot believe that this is happening on this show. I never thought that this would happen, okay? It is awesome. One of my friends was getting a DSi himself, and of course, I'm begging him. I got a box on my show because it's so exciting. And he said, yeah, okay, go ahead, man. So yes, here we got a DSi Excel. Now don't hate me for getting this, okay? Don't hate me for getting this. Oh, come on, I wanted to try it out.
Marissa, is that any different?
I think it's different for a few reasons. I mean, I think you can look at the sort of products that, you know, a product of the socialization of girls versus boys. You know, girls are buying clothes and makeup and girly movies. At the same time, at the beginning of many of those haul videos, there's some sort of an excuse about, you know, I don't want to brag, I don't want to show off, I'm doing this because my Twitter followers requested it, or I'm doing it because someone wanted to see a cosmetic haul. And with these unboxing videos, you're just seeing unbridled joy and excitement about getting it, and there seems to be no need to sort of couch their enthusiasm.
Real quick, because we're over time. Rob, gender deconstruction of the difference in like 15 seconds?
Just the real quick thing is that was great to see, because I get so many people saying to me, like, well, men don't like to shop, do they? It's just really women like to shop. And like that, I'll just show them that video from now on.
Yeah, right. Last word?
Boys buy things that do stuff, girls buy decorative things to make themselves pretty.
Same as it ever was. Thank you all. It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Here are this week's 5 online video picks. Number 1, it's fascinating to see who's against the use of eminent domain in Brooklyn to seize people's property for the Atlantic Yards project. Many liberals are against it because they don't like private developers using state power for a land grab. But it turns out some free market conservatives are also against it, like the people at Reason magazine in support of the Prospect Heights bar, Freddy's, which is slated for destruction. Watch.
You can feel it when you first walk in the door. There's just like a power, there's an energy, there's a warmth, there's sort of an excitement. We're very proud of all the elements, you know, the video, the music, you know, even the regulars. You know, you covet and develop regulars.
We all know each other's names here. It's not Cheers, it's something much darker and richer. There's just so much going on here and such a good vibe.
I will handcuff myself to this bar. Like I said, it's a show of my solidarity and other members of the neighborhood and the community, and sure, willing to go to jail, of course. Sure. What can they do to me?
Our best option is civil disobedience, public action, raising public awareness. This is more than just a symbolic handcuffing. We're about bringing this law down. We have a state senator who's going to lie down in front of the bulldozer. She'll be outside. She doesn't drink, though. We'll be inside. We've tried to make the cuffs long enough so we can get to our beers.
They're taking away my livelihood. The rest doesn't matter, you know, and a great spot in the neighborhood, a thriving spot in the neighborhood. So, yeah, of course, I'll be here. I will be here. Now I got to serve this lady.
So liberals don't like the state doing the bidding of developers. Libertarians, like at Reason magazine, don't like the state doing anything. Interesting coalition. Video pick number 2, Take America to College. Here's a montage of entries to a video contest to tell the stories of non-traditional college students, the ones who did not go right after high school.
I am actually a single mother, and you're in college. Yes, I am.
I wish I could say that I went to college straight out of high school, but life had other plans for me.
I have a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and I go to school and I stay there until I complete all my homework and hope that no one's getting an earache that night or having a tooth coming in.
I'm taking biology and physics together, which is not a good idea if you are a non-traditional student like me, because you also have to work. This is where all books, notebooks, lunch, dinner, everything is in here.
I have to work a full-time job, go to college, and be able to do my internship.
The legal department of correction for the Boston Police Department. I've taken night classes and even midnight classes.
Either you kill yourself for 4 years, or you are in debt up to your eyeballs, which is my choice.
When I don't get my loans at the beginning of the term, even though I'm working full-time, I have to pay all my own bills, so I can't afford to buy my books.
By the way, the guy in that video who came out of law enforcement was the video contest winner, just announced the other day. He gets $500 and a trip to Washington in May to be in a video series on the topic. Video pick number 3. This is a promotional video for a local company that gives New York City mob tours. I'm curious how you react to this.
Cha-cha. You never take me nowhere.
I'm taking you here.
Where are we?
We're at Cha-Cha's.
Can I eat?
You could eat anything you want. Look at all the goodies we
Can
got.
I get some pasta?
You could get pasta, you could get champagne, you could get caviar, whatever you want, we get you.
Cha-Cha, I want to take the New York City mob tour.
Well, come on, let's go. You want to eat first?
Yeah.
Or you want to take the tour?
I want to do both.
Well, let's go take the
All
let's
right.
go and eat. Hey, Skid, where are you? What are you doing? We're gonna eat something.
What eat? We gotta go take the bus. The New York City mob bus tour's leaving.
We're going to take the New York City mob tour?
Come on, right over.
Eat something.
What
Oh
eat?
my
No,
God,
forget
the
about
mob
it.
tour. I'm
All
so
right,
excited.
come on, take the
Cha-Cha,
tour.
let's
Come on,
go.
is he
New
late?
York City mob tour. I'm so excited.
Okay, ha ha ha, New York City has gangs. How cute and campy as long as they're Italian gangs. Let's go on a gang tour. But here's another way. An online excerpt from a gang tour of L.A.
We are absolutely thankful that you're here. Your participation allows the succession of an agreement between many people in the community at various levels, whether it's clergy, business, even gang members have agreed to this.
Los Angeles is the first third world city in the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on Alameda Street. Alameda is the historical boundary of South Central that was in place due to much of the segregated housing in South Central. So Alameda was the separating point that many people called the invisible wall. This area was the site of one of the largest gang wars in the history of Los Angeles between the Florencia 13 and the East Coast Crips. It has now been reduced to virtually no killings in this area, to at one particular time having one of the highest murder rates in the nation. This is actually the neighborhood where the original Crip gang started.
How similar, yet how different. The predatory business practices of the mob, a rich man's game, the murderous desperation of the gangs, a poor man's survival mechanism. Finally, I know a lot of you chose not to watch the Oscars. Too Hollywood, too long, too late, too the same every year. Same every year. Maybe you're right. Video pick number 5 sure supports that view. It's called Thankful Oscars.
I want to thank.
I've got to thank. I want to thank you.
But I especially want to thank.
I've got to thank.
I just want to thank.
I'd like to thank.
I want to thank.
I want to thank.
I want to thank.
I'd like to thank.
I'd like to thank. I want to thank.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.
Gloria, Cheryl, Bob Fink,
Lisa,
Sam, Lewis, Rebecca,
Bruce, Peter,
Alicia, Jeff,
Leo,
Keisha, Brian,
Stephen,
Brian, Bill,
Jay,
Susie, Philip and Shirley,
Deb.
My parents, Steph parents,
Family.
my family,
My cousin Vinny.
my brother,
Sister.
my wife, father, dad,
Grandpa.
Mother,
my mom,
My mother.
my mother,
Joseph.
Josh Berry,
Ben.
Fernando,
Brian, Bruce, Charles,
Hillary.
Ross,
Horton. Jamie.
Jennifer,
Janine.
Jeremy,
Joanne,
John.
Julie,
Kevin, Leo,
Louise,
Linda,
Liam, Lorraine,
Mark.
a great friend,
Mary.
the people of Uganda, Marsha, Michael,
Michelle. Pedro Almodovar.
Rick,
Robert.
Rod Russell,
Sandy,
Sophie. Stephen. Winona.
Matt,
Susan. Francesco. Scott.
Diana Douglas,
Harvey Weinstein.
Miss Booker Weinstein,
Mr. Joe Pesci.
God, everybody.
thank you to all of you.
You know, everyone.
And thanks, Mom, Dad, God, for watching this week's online video picks. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Now on to a New York rite of passage, getting hopelessly lost in Penn Station. Happens to everyone at one time or another. You find yourself at Trax Bar and Grill when you should have been on the 714 to Ronkonkoma. Slate deputy editor Julia Turner decided to investigate why Penn Station is so likely to frustrate even the most resourceful traveler, as part of a multi-part series for Slate on signs, when they work, when they don't, and why we should pay attention to them. Hey, Julia, welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here.
So you're going to walk us through a slideshow, first of all, of scenes from Penn Station.
Yeah, the best way to understand how confusing Penn Station is to examine individual journeys that you might try to take through it. So I tried to walk through a person who works downtown, is going to take the one train uptown, try to catch an Amtrak out of the city for the weekend.
All right, let's go to that first shot.
So there we have it, the one train, easy enough. Nicely, when she arrives at Penn Station, she sees a sign confirming she's at the right station. That's helpful.
Subway signs are pretty good, right?
Now this one says, okay, to the right to Penn Station, but it's an old mosaic sign, so a little hard to know whether that's still valid information, but seems promising. Okay, confirmation from the classic MTA subway signage. She's going to keep heading down that corridor. Now here she's had to walk past a stairwell on her left, and then when she turns around, she sees, oh, okay, Penn Station. So she heads down those stairs. Here's a very grim, featureless hallway that causes her to lose hope for a moment, but she propels herself forward to see what's next. Okay, Amtrak, a little bit lost in the glare of the overhead fluorescence there, but she can see it. She heads out through the turnstiles to the left. Another sign for Amtrak there. She turns right. And here we have the Long Island Railroad concourse, that sort of long, lower-level concourse. So she proceeds into it. And it's here that she comes to a decision point. To her left, she sees a sign suggesting, all right, bear left, head off of the main corridor, and you can get to Amtrak. But if she turns around 180 degrees right behind her, she sees another sign that says, no, go straight down the hallway. Just keep going the direction you're going. It's a little bit cut off there to the left, but she decides to pursue this course, to walk down the long corridor of the Long Island Railroad. So she's keeping going. She's going to keep an eye for that MTA subway signage that she's been following. The next sign, no mention of Amtrak. A little troubling, but okay. She's seen her arrow. She's going to keep going. The next sign, still no mention of Amtrak. We've got Long Island Railroad tracks here. The central corridor, she doesn't know what that is. That looks like a Long Island Railroad customer service sign. That's also troubling. No mention of Amtrak. The next sign she sees, those tracks 13 through 19, still no mention of Amtrak.
Walking gradually toward 8th Avenue.
Her rolling bag is dragging behind her. She's being bustled. Finally, Amtrak, straight ahead. So she's gone past 5 signs with no mention, causing her to doubt her journey. So she takes that last left turn to the Amtrak concourse, heads up those little stairs, another Amtrak sign, and another grim, featureless hallway that does not announce, welcome to Amtrak, here you are. That last sign at the end of the hallway, in fact, finally shows her the Amtrak Departures board.
Which she only knows because there's the Departures board. I don't even see an Amtrak sign there.
No, it's still unclear. I mean, if she were really unfamiliar with the station and looking for New Jersey Transit, it's hard to tell exactly where you are.
And why is it so bad?
Well, one thing I discovered as I started to research this problem is that the issue at Penn Station is that the different tenants there each manage their own signage. So Amtrak does Amtrak signage, New Jersey Transit does New Jersey Transit signage, the Long Island Railroad does its own signage, and each section of the station is relatively good at directing its customers to its own tracks. But when you try to make kind of a a journey across the different zones of the station, that's when you really get confused.
Now we're going to show some video excerpts in a minute that you did with David Gibson, who is a wayfinding designer. Why don't you define that term for us? What kind of an occupation is wayfinding designer?
Wayfinding was not a word that I knew until I started to look into the world of directional signage and sign design. It's basically the profession in which people design the tools, the signs, and the guiding devices that help us find our way through complicated spaces. So through airports, through train stations like Penn, through shopping malls, hospitals, convention centers, even entire cities. And it's really kind of come to the fore over the last 2 or 3 decades and become, it's sort of a field of graphic design. It's sometimes called environmental graphic design and often called wayfinding.
So let's take a look at an excerpt of a video with Julia and wayfinding designer David Gibson as he tries to get to the root of the problem at Penn Station.
We're at the intersection of 3 sign worlds. So over to our right is the serif type on the New Jersey Transit. Here we have the Helvetica of the MTA and the Long Island Railroad, and then over there is maybe Frutiger, and that's Amtrak.
Gibson's firm has done some work with the LIRR and New Jersey Transit, but he didn't pull his punches.
I think this is a wall sign where the hierarchies are a mess. There's too many messages that are all about the same size. They're evenly spaced. There's this arrow that's kind of diagonally to the left. There's another arrow that's pure left. Not good.
Wayfinders are always looking at the hierarchy of information on a sign. A good one prioritizes what's important.
So you have LIRR, if that's bold, and then the sort of second level is waiting area, tickets and information, which are modifiers of LIRR, and then you have symbols, which are public services, which are treated in a multilingual way with no words. So I think that's a pretty sweet hierarchy.
Okay, so you get this, he gets this. Is this being communicated to the higher-ups at Penn Station? Because you know, when you were on my radio show, we could take phone calls all day, all night, from people who have their Penn Station getting lost horror stories.
Well, I think one of the real problems at Penn Station is actually the dream of a better Penn Station, because people are so committed to and hopeful about the idea that perhaps someday Penn Station might be returned to its former glory and that we might have a glorious train hub once again on the west side of Manhattan. There's not a huge incentive to marshal the troops, as it were, to fix the existing situation.
Because they're hoping to throw out the whole place, basically, and rebuild it across the street, the projected Moynihan Station that's in the current post office site.
Exactly.
So let's look at a little bit more of the video with Julia and David Gibson explaining more about the signage problems in Penn Station.
Another problem Gibson sees? Penn Station fails to place signs at all the crucial decision points, places where users must choose which way to go.
We see something called the Central Corridor. Now, I would have thought we were on the Central Corridor. This feels like the Central Corridor. This is a decision point, and there's no directional signs. Maybe on this way. Now, I don't know. There might be some. No, there's none there either. We've been abandoned. So this is what you really don't want to do, is you set people on a journey, you get them to a decision point, and you don't provide information, because that's just, now there's anxiety.
But if all of this was fixed, then any out-of-towner could find their way around New York. We can't have that, can we?
It is one of the things about Penn Station. It's really a station for insiders and for commuters and for people who know the ins and outs and use it regularly, not for visitors.
So let's broaden out a little bit and look at your series more generally. Penn Station was one topic in your 6-part series about signs on Slate. Was there an overarching message?
Well, I was interested in looking at signage because, you know, I'm an editor, so I like to think about how people find their way through information through the articles that I edit. And also because on Slate, which is an online magazine, I help think a little bit about online navigation and sort of how people find their way through virtual space on the site. So when I had a chance to go do some reporting, I thought it would be pretty cool to kind of try and figure out how people guide visitors and travelers through 3D space. And what I found was essentially that we're living in a golden age of signage. I mean, signs have never been, this kind of directional signage has never been as good as it is today, because the rise of sort of the consumer-focused economy and the idea that spaces, public spaces, and corporations should be thinking about how users navigate the world and navigate space is relatively new.
So let's look at another video. Do we have the Richard Ankrum video up? This is an example of an artist, Richard Ankrum, who was so frustrated by poor highway signs in his hometown of Los Angeles that he took matters into his own hands.
Years ago, driving through downtown Los Angeles, I got lost. About 20 years later, I moved to downtown Los Angeles and then realized that the reason why I got lost 20 years ago was that the signage was inadequate. I'm in the sign business and I have been for 20 years, so that wasn't difficult. So I did the homework and then decided to just turn it into an art project. It's made exactly to spec. I followed directions, specifically what they had online, and then did field checking to make sure that it all matched. That's the idea, that not only did it work, that it would look like they did it. So I wanted to see if Caltrans would notice it. And if they did, they would assume it was their own because it looked identical. The sign is still there. They inspected it to make sure it was fastened properly and left it in place because it does need to be there.
But there's an addendum to that story, isn't there? That his sign is not actually any longer in place.
They did eventually take down his sign, but as part of an upkeep situation, and they in fact replaced it. They decided that his design was necessary for that juncture on the highway, so when they replaced it with an official Caltrans sign, they did put that 5 shield in essentially the exact place where he had located it.
So it was, as far as the average driver was concerned, an identical sign, except it was the official one put there by the state.
Yeah.
Did they even notice it? These state officials who themselves must have been using that road.
No, it went unnoticed for months, and I think it was only once the story was broken come by a local newspaper in Los Angeles that Caltrans kind of had to sheepishly say, oh my goodness, somebody put up a sign on the major highway and nobody noticed until we read about it in the newspaper.
That's pretty funny. Now, you say that the area of wayfinding and wayfinding design is linked in some way to the urban theories of people like the legendary New Yorker Jane Jacobs. How so?
Well, this particularly comes into play with a field of wayfinding called urban wayfinding, which we've seen rise pretty strikingly in the last 2 decades in American cities. A lot of major American cities, Philadelphia, Charlotte, have implemented sign systems that aimed at helping people get off of the highways into their cities, into parking garages, into good pedestrian neighborhoods, and find the local landmark shopping districts and whatnot. And the people who work on these systems really think of Jane Jacobs and also another urban theorist named Kevin Lynch as the real forefathers of this movement, a movement that thought about how the modern American city could be accessible, open, legible, and usable for pedestrians, for individuals. So to not be built around highways, huge modernist, unfriendly architecture, but around friendly, accessible pedestrian environments.
We just have a couple of minutes left, but the third part of your series is about London, a notoriously difficult city to navigate your way around. So there's this thing called Legible London, and we've got some slides from your piece of that. Let's take a look and walk us real quick through what we're looking at here.
So this is a sign map in London's West End, and Legible London is an urban wayfinding system that's focused really narrowly around encouraging walking in London. London is both lucky to have the famous iconic tube map, but the tube map handicaps Londoners because it misrepresents distances in London central city. So people might look at the tube map and think, oh my God, it'll take me forever to walk to Piccadilly. I better get on the tube and make 2 connections. And
but it's not really
truth, it's only a 5 or 6 minute walk away.
Let's go to the next one.
So here we have a system of maps that have gone up in several pilot programs throughout London, and they show walking distances. So you see that "you are here" circle kind of snaps your attention to the center of the map, and it shows you exactly what a 15-minute walk would be in the area around you and gives you a geographically accurate portrait of the city.
And another one.
One other thing that they've done with the sign system that a lot of urban wayfinding designers have done is help users who are sometimes afraid of maps get into the map. So one thing they do is that axonometric rendering of Selfridges, that slightly 3D looking rendering, is a way to help people look at the map in front of them, look at the world in front of them, and say, okay, I see how these 2 things relate. Another thing they do is not put north at the top of maps. They'll do a heads-up orientation so that whatever you're facing in the street in front of you is also at the top of the map. This is a not nearly as good map of New York that I happened to pick up as I was strolling around the city while doing this research. And you can see the hierarchies aren't as good. There's a jumble of store names, probably the people who are members of the Flatiron 23rd Partnership, I would venture to guess. One of the key things you got to do is figure out what the crucial landmarks are, what the key destinations are, and highlight only those so that it's only the crucial information that's on the maps. Otherwise, a map is just a confusing mess.
There's one more thing I want to show, and I think we have time for it. It's the exit signs. We use different kinds of exit signage here in the United States than just about anywhere else in the world. Let's see if we can bring that up. Do we have the exit sign? Okay, so this is
a version of the Running Man, which is the international standard exit sign. In most of the world, most of Europe, a lot of Asia, you'll find some version of this guy running out of a door on a green background as the symbol for emergency exit. In America, we use the big red word, and one problem that was pointed out to me is that, first of all, it's an English word, so if you don't speak English, you don't understand it. Second of all, it's red, which is typically a color that means stop, don't come here, alert, danger. So designers...
But so does the Running Man look like danger to me. Not as much in this one as in the first one, but it's like, holy cow, I got to get out of here.
Well, that second one you just showed is actually the official international standard design for exit, and it was developed by a Japanese designer named Yukio Ota in the late 1970s, and he went through 58 different iterations of that Running Man to find the perfect level of franticness. So he was guided by the Japanese Fire Safety Organization to make it look like it was running a little bit slower so it wouldn't be so panicky. And I think it's a pretty elegant design.
Is there a moral of the story after your 6-part series, or in your 6-part series?
The moral of the story is pay attention to the signs and don't take them for granted. I think with GPS and satellite navigation coming down the pike, you know, the sign industry may not always be as robust as it is today.
Julia Turner, you can see her stuff on Slate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, Brooklyn's Gowanus Canal. When will it become safe and clean? And will there ever be gondolas? This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY leads to my career as a healthcare professional.
CUNY leads to my career as an accountant.
CUNY leads to my career as a music teacher.
CUNY leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services.
Gain access to exciting employment opportunities through the power of a CUNY education.
As an employer, CUNY Leads provides me with a more qualified, diverse workforce.
Each campus has its own Leads counselor, a go-to person who knows you
and helps you enjoy every aspect of college life.
For more information and to find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNY Leads. CUNY Leads to the career I always wanted.
Oh, it must be careful. Well, that's a nice picture.
Come on, Anna.
Okay.
Foreclosure doesn't affect just you. It affects your whole family, too. If you've fallen behind on your mortgage, we can help. Call 1-888-995-HOPE, because nothing is worse than doing nothing.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. The Gowanus Canal. 100 years ago, the 1.8-mile waterway through western Brooklyn was a busy transportation artery. Now it's poisoned, despite environmental efforts, and lifeless, despite developers' dreams of Venice in New York. But perhaps there is hope. On March 2nd, the Gowanus Canal received the federal Superfund status the community has been fighting for. But the process of cleaning up the toxic soup there will take years. Joining us to weigh the dreams against the realities of the Gowanus Canal are community activist Marlene Donnelly, a leader of FROG, that's Friends and Residents of Greater Gowanus, and landscape architect Kate Orff, founder of the firm Scape. Her team has drafted designs for New York's future waterfront. They go on display at the Museum of Modern Art in a couple of weeks. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks.
And so, Marlene, you're now a Superfund site in Gowanus. Is that a good thing?
I think it's a very good thing. I think it really opens up a possibility that something really can change the tide in the Gowanus.
Now, the City of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, fought this designation. Why was it controversial?
I think they were moving ahead with construction plans where they wanted to have 12-story housing developments along both sides of the canal. I think that this was just going to get in their way. They were going to be having to do more cleanup than they had anticipated doing. It would drive developers' costs up, and they didn't want the EPA to be overseeing what was going on. This is, I think, for us, a great opportunity for that to kind of step aside, come in, really assess the environmental conditions there, and step back and see, well, what really can this landscape here support.
And so why is it worth it to you to spend the extra money to clean it up further? Is that you envision people swimming there, or why, rather than having a, dirtier site that people are using and living near?
The Gowanus has been taking on industrial waste for quite a long time. When the EPA first came in to do their assessment, they said, we usually measure toxins in parts per billion, parts per million, sometimes parts per trillion. They exist in parts per 100 in the Gowanus Canal. It's really that bad of a situation. There have been lots of coal tar sites that have been dumping waste into there. That coal tar settles in, it burps up from the Gowanus Canal, it leaves sheens of oil across the top of the canal, and that odor causes cancer. The vapors, the gases, you can have headaches hanging out there for too long. We have those of us who live in and around blocks from the area. There's sewage overflow into the canal. There's a lot of different aspects to the cleanup, but nothing can live in the canal. The Army Corps came in back in 2002 to do some evaluation testing, and they found nothing but worms living at the bottom that live in anaerobic conditions. There's no life in the canal.
So, Kate, do you care one way or the other as an architect, designer who, you know, designs things for the waterfront?
Do I care? Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, we're living in basically a world, an urban landscape that has been transformed completely in the last 150 years. Just if you could imagine thinking back to, you know, the 1700s, what the Gowanus must have looked like with rocky shoals, and it was a series of islands and where oysters grew to the size of dinner plates. And through the years, as the economy of New York and frankly, the United States has changed from shipping to heavy industry, and now, of course, those areas are now being repopulated by residential communities. So I absolutely care not only about environmental health, and it's a major issue, and I just spent last week actually touring the portion of the Mississippi River in between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, which is also called the Cancer Alley, or the chemical corridor. And there are really tremendous issues of environmental health and sustainability, not only in the Gowanus, but in every kind of post-industrial landscape.
I think we have a picture of what we might call Kadorf's Gowanus oyster fantasy. What are we looking at here?
Right. Well, I mean, we did a project, Scape did a project for the Museum of Modern Art, which was called Oyster Texture. And part of the idea for the project wasn't just to go on a sort of problem-solving basis, but actually to put forward a sort of vision, a transformative vision that kind of got in front of the process that would generate dialogue. So what you're looking at is really our way of sort of trying to spark dialogue and innovation and change in the landscape by challenging all New Yorkers to an oyster eating contest in the year 2050 along the canal, and trying to think backwards from what one would have to do to try to collaborate at not only the community level, but at the state and city level, and at many levels, to be able to generate massive change in the environment.
And Marlene, this could happen. I mean, from the description that you gave of the Gowanus today, we seem to be a few years out, let's say, from eating oysters from there.
Well, you do need to remove the toxins. I think right now nothing's living in the canal. Oysters do have a possibility of helping deal with the sewage overflow, the cleansing the water from those. I'm not sure how edible they are, but they could. But they could clean the water enough for the fish that are there that the birds eat it. Overall environment improvement.
Speaking of cleaning up, here's another slide, and tell us what we're looking at here. Marlene, do you know? Is this yours, or is
Sorry,
Kate,
that was the slide that we had put in, but in reference to Marlene's work. And
there are pictures from the ancient old canal, barges along there in the black and white photo.
That's on the bottom.
There are pictures of flooding on 9th Street, which is the problem with the overall watershed area. Drainage, and the other one looks like just scum floating across the top of the canal.
So does Superfund designation freeze all development in the area, or only certain projects? Of course, it was in the headlines last week when the designation came out that the Toll Brothers company decided to cancel a development project, housing project they were working on.
It doesn't freeze any development. First of all, it doesn't. You know, that was a decision Toll Brothers made on their own.
Well, it may freeze it in the marketplace, if not by government decree. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. The Toll Brothers actually never purchased the land that they were planning on developing on. They had got a rezoning to put 12-story buildings on the site. They were going to put up 480 units of housing, and that was just about a year ago before the Superfund was announced.
So what can be built? Anything during the Superfund cleanup process?
The current zoning for the whole area is manufacturing, and you can build as of right in that manufacturing. Whole Foods has been looking to develop a site in the manufacturing area and has to deal with the zoning that exists there.
Kate, you have some photos with you.
I do. I don't know if this is like
we just have a couple minutes.
Completely possible, right? No. Well, I mean, in terms of what can be built, this is sort of what I was referencing in terms of, you know, one of the things that we drew inspiration was from the past, right? This past landscape, which was basically a mixed landscape of these beaches and shoals that shows, and basically for the project in which we kind of revision Gowanus Canal in a more regional context, you can see how this network of sort of slow water and shallows actually protected the inland community of the Gowanus. So that's actually how we started to attack the project. So our kind of plan is we were sort of looking at it as a kind of a back to the future idea, where actually where we start is not land-based, because you're talking about land-based scenarios for development, but actually when you deal with water, it changes everything. Water connects, intermingles, has a completely different set of ideas. So we start by kind of regenerating what was formerly an oyster reef offshore at the Bay Ridge Flats. That oyster reef not only cleans the water, but also serves to attenuate waves, which creates the opportunities for a new kind of Gowanus Canal world to evolve.
And are those from the PS1 Museum of Modern Art exhibition?
Yeah, this is basically imagery that'll be appearing in the Museum of Modern Art. And this is just two sections of a very long segment of a wall, but basically what you're seeing is that this new Palisade Bay Reef Park, which we're envisioning out at the Bay Ridge Flats, could evolve and then in turn enable a kind of a new set of kind of Gowanus life, a mixed-use community with floating oyster nurseries to take place. So although it's definitely something that is, you know, we're trying to frame in terms of more of a visionary project, that's something that would generate dialogue, you know, among community activists. And
Marlene, forgive us for putting those in front of your face, but can this actually happen?
Well, I think we're at a process now where EPA is just coming in and they're going to be spending some time doing some assessment. And as they assess what's going on, find out where there are pockets of contamination, they're going to find out some areas are worse than others and some are not as bad as people thought. But they're going to have to put fixes in place, even on the land side. For example, the public place site, which is a toxic coal gas site, they've envisioned this recovery wall to go along the way. That will need constant maintenance, will have repercussions, it will off-gas even into the future. Under the previous mayor's plan, they were moving forward to actually have a development there with a daycare center next to this recovery wall, not acknowledging that there are really detriments to being next to a coal tar recovery wall. That the fixes that will have to go in place will affect or in some ways dictate what you can and can't do on the landscape. So I think we have to really start to wait till some of that comes in. We have to look at the data to see where there are possibilities and for certain uses and not other uses. We do think the real fix is going to be engaging nature in the best way you possibly can.
There will be a future for the Gowanus area.
There is a future.
Post-Superfund. Thank you both very much for coming in. And that's it for this week's show. We are here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 or anytime online at brianlehrer.tv. And tune into my daily radio show, 10 a.m. on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, filmmaker Michael Moore. That's 10 a.m. on WNYC, 93.9 FM and AM 820. Talk to you then.